Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. Where's my schedule gone? Oh no, I moved it to somewhere. Very clumsy start. Let me just find my schedule. I put it into the depths of a folder, I think. There it is. Perfect. Nice and trippy. So we're here with Alex to continue our little series of game analysis of the Grand Chess Tour semi-finals, but as you can see from the schedule, I will be playing Title Tuesday, 20 minutes from now. So I think we're gonna have to get to the games nice and soon. Let's remove Mr. John Spielman's head. And again, nope,
Well,
can't move him.
refuses.
He's here to stay. And so we'll just look at the games anyway. Yesterday, we saw the both games ended in a draw.
Yeah. And today we will continue our policy of not revealing what the result was while the actual result is displayed on screen. So the first game we're going to look at is Ding Liren or Liren Ding, I never know with the Chinese players, against Mr. Levon Aronian. And not an especially exciting game, to be honest, because, well, for those of you who caught the first round game yesterday at the analysis, we mentioned that in this position, we talked about this move order, in this case with the colors the other way around, but Levon Aronian gives Ding the same treatment, and we had said that one of the reasons this move order is quite feared is because of
the Nimzo.
The Nimzo Indian, exactly. So knight to c3 here is met by bishop b4, and that's exactly what Ding Liren opted to allow. He continued with e3, which is one of the absolute main lines of the Nimzo Indian, and play continued very normally here. One of the nice things about the Nimzo is black can typically continue in a variety of different ways, and the idea, of course, is white may have a center, black may even part with his bishop, but if he parts with his bishop, it's going to come at the cost of structure, and also look at that castled king versus white's uncastled king for now. So the center is what white has, and black started to chip away at it, and after the moves bishop d3, takes, continuing to hack away at the center with d5.
I just want to say hello to the chat. I will not be responding so much unless there is a question about the games, but I see you all, and I'll be more communicative with the chat during Title Tuesday, because this is going to go to YouTube. We want to see how that goes. So I think for that we'll be focusing more on the chess, the game-related comments and questions. But I see you all, and I'll be more responsive in a very short while.
Not to mention that in 17 minutes you're playing Title Tuesday. So even if we could afford...
It's going to be a speedy analysis.
Exactly. So luckily that's my forte. So d5. And the thing is here, if white, let's say, castles or something like this, then black would take, and you've got an isolated queen's pawn, which is fine. It's a playable position, but maybe white decided, I will take here, and this way both sides have an isolated queen's pawn instead. The drawback of this, of course, is that when e takes d5 happens, this bishop is able to come out of the board, and that's exactly what happened here with bishop g4. And to be honest with you, black is doing very well out of the opening, which is what we expect out of a Nimzo. And I think the first critical decision is here. I took a look, and the main continuation traditionally has been a move like bishop g5. And I think we can see here what black does is take. The reason for this is, let's say that black develops normally, then what would happen is takes. Then you don't want to take like this to damage your structure, so queen takes f6. And the problem is this pawn falls. And unlike in the video that we made not so long ago, it's as yet unreleased. If you do play this move knight to d7, then in this case knight takes d5 does.
Unlike the elephant trap, there's a little video on the elephant trap coming very soon.
Exactly. So here knight takes d5, of course, would be a possibility. But the problem is that a position like this, say bishop here, takes, some move like knight d7 now.
Percy, thank you very much for subscribing.
Thank you very much, Percy. So if we play something like this, then okay, the games have continued historically like this, takes, some kind of decision like this. And the thing is, on the one hand, white has the bishop pair, but on the other, look at black's development, and also look at what's the other asset here that black has.
The isolated pawn.
Exactly, that isolated queen's pawn. So Ding decided, I want to try and go for some kind of
It's a very
win.
drastic way of dealing with the situation.
Yeah, I guess he just wants something a little bit more sharp. And I saw in the commentary, Peter Svidler was saying, well, this is good news for chess fans because it means it might get lively. But the game got lively in the opposite direction of what Ding wanted. This move, of course, is very dangerous because there's one square in particular that gets weakened massively. What is that square?
F4.
Exactly, right? So you can no longer, you don't have an E pawn, and now you don't have a G pawn that can potentially cover. So that's a potential outpost. And you can picture that at some point or another, maybe a knight will fly into that square. And so it's a permanent weakness. And we can actually see as the game goes on, white plays knight E2, trying to cover up these squares perhaps. Black continues with knight C6 and bishop G5. But you can see the engine here really doesn't like what Ding has done. This weakness, this is more of a liability than an asset. Black just continues to play really natural moves, bishop, knight to c6, rook to e8, and here white captures on g6, takes, and now plays the rook to c1. Well, black now continues to develop. All the moves are, almost kindergarten moves by black, but he's in great shape. And now black has broken this pin. And I think white was just a little bit bothered by the idea that, let's say that you play some move, black will plant that knight on e4, hit this bishop, beautiful knight on e4, you have to move the bishop around, and then maybe even hit you with something like this and hit this target. So in any case, white decides to give up this bishop, but that means, remember we said those...
The squares are even weaker now.
Exactly, and I think that after the move queen to d3 here, the computer clearly prefers black, and perhaps the best way to have continued was some move like, there's so many options, but even just some simple developing move like king to g7, or consolidating move, you control here.
Can we try and play on the h file?
Exactly, you might put a rook on that semi-open h file, which white created after allowing h takes g6. You might also drop this bishop, it's not really doing anything here on the queen side, back to d6. And I saw a really nice maneuver. Let's say that white decided to consolidate here. One really nice maneuver would be this move knight d8. So it looks really silly, but do you see what the idea might be? Why would you want to disconnect your rooks?
Let's see in the chat. Can you see the idea of behind knight d8 to jump to f4 eventually?
Exactly. Knight goes to d8, to e4, and maybe eye up that f4 square. So really very, very nice.
By the way, Percy, of course, you totally dressed like a chessboard on purpose.
Exactly, yeah.
Totally planned.
Absolutely. I'm glad somebody noticed. It's actually a pretty funny comment. So after queen d3, however, Aronian, who has been feeling sick, plays a move that's not so... not very aggressive. He goes rook to e4. And the point is that now white is able to play knight g3 with a tempo on the rook. Now he drops the rook back. Maybe Aronian figures better your knight here than your knight here because f4 is weaker. That might have been the idea. But the thing is, without the knight on e2, white can now go rook e1.
And start to swap in.
Exactly.
pieces.
And I think that Ding at this stage understood the opening has not been a success. I have some weaknesses, but I certainly don't have an attack.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go into damage control mode. And the thing is, I think Aronian was happy to see that. King went to g7, king g2. Now he plays this maneuver, but it's maybe a little bit too late. White has no problem dropping the knight back to e2. Again, patching up that weakness on f4. Knight goes to e6 and now knight d2. You see really that exchange of one pair of rooks is very comfortable for white, because imagine if you had one rook here and another rook here.
Could be a different story.
Exactly. And what would white do? White would have one rook here and then either a passive rook on h1 or a rook on c1 with no square that it can actually enter.
Yeah.
So definitely that exchange I think is really favorable, and at this point still black is better because white has no plan and he has this weakness. But white is also pretty solid, and again, a testament to black's lack of fighting spirit because probably of his health issues. He plays rook h4 here.
A slightly less elegant move repetition than yesterday.
Exactly, yeah, a lot less elegant, yeah. So after knight f3 comes rook h8, knight d2, and now that effective draw invitation,
Which
and
was
white
accepted.
Exactly, white of course is happy to accept, and that is that.
And these guys will be going to tiebreak tomorrow. We'll hopefully look at that tomorrow night at some point.
Yeah, let's
And
hope.
that leaves us 8 minutes to look at Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Magnus Carlsen.
No more than these guys deserve.
Magnus came today very well prepared, is the only thing I know. When I checked into the broadcast, he was half an hour up on the clock, and it seemed like he had things under control.
Yeah, so Magnus, one of the things that's amazing about what he's doing is he knows all the mainline theory, but he's so good, he's able to like innovate on top, right? To catch up. I mean, you know how tough it is to keep up with the state of theory. But Magnus
to keep innovating. I mean, yesterday he came up with this f3 idea against the Najdorf.
Yeah.
And it was clear, I saw he said in the interview, he just wanted to bring a fresh idea.
Exactly. And today he basically, it's not quite a new idea, but here in this position, first of all, as you can see, we have the Openings Explorer up to show the viewers. Bishop e7 and b5, they're the main moves, but knight takes e4, the open Spanish, this we've seen many times before. But what's interesting is here in this position, you can see Magnus's strategy. He doesn't go for b5, which is the overwhelming main move, but he plays bishop e7, a rarer choice that scores more poorly, but actually he's basically solved it till the end. Reference, going back to your point that he came very well prepared. White continued with the main line rook e1, and here black chooses this move pawn to b5. Now if I'm, let's say, thinking about some new line and I see this score, I would say, man, this is depressing, right? So I either win or I draw, but Magnus, of course, doesn't take such a superficial approach.
Also, this is a very short match, only 2 games, and I think Magnus is very confident in his rapid and blitz skills.
Rightly so.
Although it has to be said, and that's why I'm really looking forward to this playoff tomorrow, MVL beat him 3 times in a row in blitz this year.
Oh, wow.
He beat him twice in the Abidjan Grand Prix, in the Ivory Coast, and also at the Norwich as opening blitz.
Yeah, MVL is probably, MVL and Ding, I think, are the guys who give Magnus the best run for his money. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. But as far as the opening battle is concerned, he definitely won it here. After this move b5, MVL went for the main line, rook takes e4. Along comes this move d5. You really don't want to, let's say, take here. I think, for example, you might be faced with d5, have to move the knight, then these pawns are falling, it's quite ugly. Or even d takes e5.
And Percy is saying Jan is like a bottomless pit of ideas in these lines, referring to the fact that it could be Jan Gustafsson is, of course, one of Magnus's seconds, and could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's one of the
the
workarounds behind this.
Could well be. So after rook takes e4 came the move d5, and then knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, and b takes a4. And you can see that we're still in some theory, but Rajabov has played it a couple of times, but at the highest levels, the amount of games are not that much. Maxime, he chose one of the top 2 ideas in this position, which is b3. No doubt knight c3 had been looked at by Carlsen. And after here, castle, we can more or less remove this openings book. Now the idea is bishop a3, because you see black's structure is worse, material is equal, black's structure is worse, but he does have the bishop pair. So
we want to get rid of one of the bishops.
Yeah, and especially this bishop is probably going to come to d6, hit the rook, so bishop to a3 makes a lot of sense, but the price that we pay positionally is...
The knight on the rim.
Is...
Dim.
Dim, absolutely. And actually this, I think, defined the rest of black's strategy. He went rook e8, exchanging maybe arguably white's best piece, that active rook on e5. And after the exchange, white tries to develop with queen to d2. Black finds the best square for his only undeveloped minor piece, the bishop on f5, and puts pressure on the c2 pawn. But importantly, this move, bishop f5, it also has another effect, which is if you look at this knight, how are you going to get it back into the game? you certainly can't go here. You can't go here. So you're probably going to want to go some kind of route this way. But the second that that happens, black can just chop off on c2, and then we've got basically equal pawns, very little material, and we just have an easy draw. If white wants to avoid this, it's not very easy, but pretty much the only way is the way that Maxime chose in the game. Go play c4, and now that leads to a few exchanges, and then in order, again, if you go knight c2, first of all, this pawn may fall, but second of all, once these two minor pieces come off the board, you're never going to win. So he went c takes d5, queen takes d5, and knight c4. He got his knight to a good square.
But now he has a pawn weakness.
Exactly. Now he's got this bad structure, much like black had a bad structure. So now you're saying, well, there's no good reason for white to be better anyway, even with the minor pieces on the board. The game continued a few moves here with bishop e6, rook e5, and queen d7. And white pushes this pawn, trying to annoy black. But black, Magnus here said, you know, I came to the board with the intention of taking this to the tie breaks, and this little d5 push is not really gonna stop me.
Eases the task of simplifying everything after the move.
Exactly. So he just plays rook d8. He allows this idea. I'm sure both players saw this little sequence. Rook d8. The point is, you can take my bishop, but I'll take your queen. And whether or not you take here intermezzo, it's not going to change anything fundamentally. In the end, that wasn't done. He just took immediately. And after rook takes d2, again, you have that option to take. Worth pointing out, you'd love to play e7 and win on the spot. If it wasn't
a little back rank spanker.
Exactly, a back rank spanker. You heard it here first. So a rook d1 check here. The problem is, of course, rook e1 is the only move, and then it's checkmate. So after rook takes d2, white instead created some luft for his king. But after this exchange, now rook to a2, defending the pawn, rook c6, and each side go after one of the weaknesses. And we've got a position that, well, we've seen it many times before. Rook and 3 versus rook and 3. And at this level, of course, as the engine says, it's 0-0-0. They did play on for a few more moves like this. Take your pick. There's a million ways to draw these kind of positions. Magnus even, you know, just said, look, I can give you a couple of pawns here, because if you look at this database, once this move rook b5 happens and king here, you cannot hold on to both pawns. And sooner or later, as you can see here, it is now a draw. And if you go something else like this, and I take this pawn, as you can see, it's a table-based draw. Both players know this. So they continued f6, takes, and the king's on the board only.
Insufficient material.
Insufficient material, and you've got 100 seconds or so before you've got to play a tournament.
That was your quickest game analysis ever. I'm sorry we had to rush this a little bit. I hope you still enjoyed it. And yeah, I will upload this to YouTube as ever. Let us know any suggestions, comments, feedback.
Absolutely. And if you'd like me to talk a little faster next time in the analysis, don't hesitate to say it. We can try and cram analysis in. We're thinking we're going to call it the 60-second analysis.
That's what we'll
a whole new series. Okay, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Good luck in the
penalties. And apparently you're quite fluent in English, which is good. Guys, I'm going to end the stream now, but I will restart it in just 1 second so that I can upload this to YouTube. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in just a second.